So this video is about the disciple whom Jesus loved. And when I was reading through the Bible in the Gospel of John, I noticed that there were some very mysterious writings and references to a disciple whom Jesus loved. So I started thinking about this, and I was like, why is it being referred to this way? Most people assume that the Gospel of John is written by the Apostle John. I think that it actually is much deeper than that. And I think that at least some of the Gospel of John is written by Lazarus and not by John. I'm not a Bible scholar. I'm not an expert in sacred texts. But I just think that there's like a hidden message that's here, an Easter egg, if you will, that Lazarus is actually the disciple whom Jesus loved. And so I have some slides here that I'd like to go over to show you this. So thank you so much for watching the video, and I hope that it is a blessing to you, and let me know what you think. Thank you. As you can see here, at least 6 times there is a reference to the disciple whom Jesus loved. And probably the most telling one is the last one. This is John 21, chapter 20, and he says, Then Peter, turning around, saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following, who had leaned on his breast at the Last Supper, and said, Lord, who is the one who betrays you? Verse 21, Peter, seeing him, says to Jesus, But Lord, what about this man? And then verse 22, Jesus said to him, If I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? You follow me. So I've seen some ministers preach about these verses and say that Peter had some jealousy over John because he loved him so much, but that just doesn't fit right. It doesn't make sense to me. So, but what does? Why would he ask, what about this man? It doesn't make any sense that he would ask that about John. Who cares? But you know who he would care about? What about this man? The one who's following around behind them? Is if it was Lazarus. And why? Because he had raised Lazarus from the dead. So if you raise Lazarus from the dead, does he die? Does he return with Jesus? What happens to Lazarus? And then Jesus said, If I will that he remain till I come, what's that to you? Why would John remain? But maybe Lazarus would remain because he has already been dead and raised from the dead. So let's look into some things about who Lazarus was and what are some of the clues here that this could be Lazarus. Okay, so that was a big one. What about this man? So let's look at who Lazarus was. He was a man from Bethany whom Jesus raised from the dead. He was the brother of Mary and Martha, and Mary describes to him when she says, Lord, behold, the one whom you love is sick. So there's a pretty big mention there that Jesus loved him. And then also in John 11:36, just after the very famous verse, Jesus wept, in John 11:36, then the Jews said, see how he loved him. His specific love for a specific person isn't mentioned that I'm aware of, and not especially towards John. So Lazarus, so far, it has been mentioned. Lazarus as well has gained the attention of the chief priests because they plot to kill him, as is mentioned in John chapter 12, verse 10. But the chief priests plotted to put Lazarus to death also because on the account of him, many of the Jews went away and believed in Jesus. So they had their eyes on Lazarus as well. John chapter 18, verse 16, but Peter stood at the door outside. Then the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to her who kept the door and brought Peter in. John wasn't known to the high priest that we know of, but do you know who we do know who was known to the high priest? Lazarus, because they plotted to kill him. Moving forward to John chapter 19, verse 25. Now therefore stood by the cross of Jesus his mother, and his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas. And I don't know if that's how you say it. And Mary Magdalene. When Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing by, he said to his mother, Woman, behold your son. Then he said to the disciple, Behold your mother. And from that hour, that disciple took her to his own home. Now, that is important when we look at the ascension. If my theory is correct that Lazarus is the disciple whom Jesus loved, if we look at the ascension in Luke chapter 24, verse 50, and he led them out as far as Bethany, and he lifted up his hands and blessed them. Now it came to pass while he blessed them that he was parted from them and carried up into heaven. Why Bethany? What is important about Bethany? Well, I'll tell you why. I think is because that is where his mother was. Because if you remember, Lazarus was from Bethany. So if he loved Lazarus so much, who else would he trust his mother with than with the person whom he loved, the disciple whom he loved? So now if we go to the big clue here, then Peter, turning around, saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following. And this is in John chapter 21, verse 20. And then Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, But Lord, what about this man? Jesus said to him, If I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? You follow me. Then this saying went out among the brethren that this disciple would not die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he would not die, but that if I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? This is the disciple who testifies of these things and wrote these things, and we know that his testimony is true. And there are also many other things that Jesus did, which if they were written down one by one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. Amen.